Channels follows the news from ITN.
From the headquarters of ITN, News at 10, with Trevor McDonald.
Tearful reunions in Sarajevo across the Bridge of Brotherhood. Attorney General says I considered resigning over arms to Iraq. Israelis storm a Palestinian hideout. And the sex education controversy, just how much should our children be taught? Good evening. The Bosnian capital Sarajevo was shown a way out of the brutality and despair of nearly 2 years of war today with the reopening of a bridge. It's called the Bridge of Brotherhood and Unity and is a link between Serb and Muslim-controlled sectors. Today, families long separated were tearfully reunited across it. But only a few. Controls and bureaucracy on both sides kept many more back. Gabby Rado of ITN's Channel 4 News reports from Sarajevo.
From early this morning, the people besieged for 2 years gathered to see if what the UN last Thursday called an agreement on freedom of movement would live up to its name. There was a great deal of skepticism, because hardly anyone was able to get an official permit to cross over in time for today. But then suddenly the bridge fell silent as two figures began their walk across from the government-held side. Eventually the first civilian appeared from the Serb side. By now people were only allowed to go one at a time. They didn't even dare to look at each other as they passed. But when they reached the other side, the emotions took over. Almost 2 years since the descent into war began here, today was supposed to be a first symbolic step in the rehabilitation of this shattered community. What's just going on now serves to demonstrate that Sarajevo remains a city divided by barbed wire and mines, by mistrust and hatred. Stoyanka Lazica was one of those allowed over the bridge from Grbavica. By the time she had reached the Muslim-controlled side, she was too overcome to notice the applause of those whose relatives hadn't made it this time. Her friends took her to the block of flats where her daughter lives. A daughter who had no idea her mother was among the fortunate few. And then she met the grandson she'd never seen because of the war. Less than 2 miles had divided them, but she'd only heard about the baby's birth through the International Red Cross. Today's very limited opening up of just some of the routes amounted to a very token gesture towards the lifting of the siege. The heart-rending scenes on either side of the bridge proved just how much pain ordinary people have suffered because of the division of their city. Sadly, there was plenty of evidence today that this new Berlin Wall is set to stay for a long time to come. Gabby Rado, News at 10, Sarajevo.
Sadly, it wasn't all encouraging news from Bosnia today. Serbian forces have looted a UN convoy traveling into the besieged Muslim town of Megla in central Bosnia. The convoy was carrying 90 tons of food aid. Megla had been cut off from the outside world for 6 months. The first UN convoy since October reached there last Sunday. The UN described the incident as very serious. The central figure in the arms to Iraq affair, the Attorney General Sir Nicholas Lyle, told News at 10 tonight he hoped he wasn't going to be the government's fall guy. He revealed that he'd considered resigning and would have done if he felt he'd done anything wrong. Sir Nicholas advised government ministers to sign public interest immunity certificates, which kept information from the defence in the Matrix Churchill trial. He appears before the Scott inquiry tomorrow. Kevin Dunn has this report.
On the eve of the most critical day of his political life, the Attorney General is fighting back, defending his conduct in the Matrix Churchill affair and insisting he's no intention of being the fall guy.
I hope not to be the fall guy because I believe in justice and I believe I advised carefully. I certainly don't feel beleaguered by colleagues and I'm very much sustained by the support and warmth of feeling House of Commons.
You don't feel that the knives are out for you?
No. If Lord Justice Scott disagrees with you and criticises you, will you resign? If I thought that I'd done something wrong at the outset, that would have been the time for me to have resigned. When the case collapsed, if I thought I'd done something wrong. I thought about this carefully at the time. I thought about my position carefully then. I've given 100 pages of careful evidence in answer to Lord Justice Scott's questions. This is a serious inquiry from which we can all learn lessons.
It is in this room that Sir Nicholas Lisle will face Lord Justice Scott to answer crucial questions, not least why he ordered ministers, including a very reluctant Michael Heseltine, to sign the so-called gagging orders, which would have prevented these government documents from being disclosed. The Scott inquiry has already revealed how the documents were part of an extraordinary Whitehall paper chase. The process began with the prosecution counsel, Alan Moses QC, who had to decide which documents were relevant to the case. They were passed to the departmental solicitor Gerald Hosker, whose office decided which should not be released. He then got the relevant minister to sign the immunity certificate. 3 did so immediately, but Michael Heseltine was unhappy and consulted the Attorney General, who told him it was his duty. He then signed an amended certificate, which went to Judge Brian Smedley, who unusually decided to reject them in the interests of justice, causing the case to collapse. No one knows how often ministers routinely sign certificates, but News at 10 has learned that gagging orders are used by the government at least 12 times a year. Lord Jenkins, who in the last Labour government had to sign certificates, rejects the notion of the Attorney General ordering ministers about.
He comes in, and as though he were a grand panjandrum, says, you do this, or that to me is absolutely farcical. I know what I would say to an Attorney General who came in and told me that I had to sign that. I would say to him, I'll do a thing again.
A defence lawyer in the Matrix Churchill case says the Attorney General owes his client an apology.
I'd like to hear the Attorney General apologize to him. No person should ever be put through the experiences that Paul Henderson has had to undergo on charges of which he was entirely innocent and which never should have been brought.
The Attorney General says he doesn't believe in scapegoats and insists he acted throughout the Matrix Churchill affair with complete integrity. He says he's looking forward to saying that in no uncertain terms when he takes the hot seat. Kevin Dunn, News at 10, at the Scott inquiry.
Over now to our political editor, Michael Brunson at Westminster. Michael, the Attorney General was fighting back tonight. Will he survive?
Yes, very much so. He is going to try and put up a fight tomorrow, and this interview that he gave tonight was part of that. The problem is, though, that his argument over the public immunity certificates is a pretty sophisticated one. He's saying, yes, he did tell ministers to sign these certificates, and he says, yes, I did it without looking at the documents. But he's going to say that that was because his role in that was to advise ministers on the sorts of documents that they ought to sign. He says very strongly over and over again tonight in his interview, these were not gagging orders. The great problem is that whatever the system, however it worked, and because of his part in it, 3 innocent men who'd actually been helping British intelligence very nearly went to jail. And on the success, if you like, of Sir Nicholas arguing his case tomorrow will, I think, depend his political future.
And that's not the only problem for the government, is it? There's still the looming problem